Welcome to Old State Saloon, everybody. If you could grab your seats, we're about ready to get started for our town hall panel discussion here. Tonight is going to be discussing things that matter in our upcoming election. And some of those things are oaths, ranked choice voting, and drag queens, among some other things. So we're going to hit those topics. I'm going to introduce you to your panel up here today. First, we'll start over here with Christy Zito. She is a former senator and the current Senate candidate for Legislative District 8. Give her a round of applause. And then we have Owyhee County Sheriff, the legendary Larry Kendrick. Does anybody ever say that? No. All right, well, I'm the first one. Legendary Larry. All right. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here. All right, and then next to me on my left is Doug Traubel. He is running on the Constitution Party for Sheriff for Ada County. Give a hand for Doug.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And then over on his left is Sheriff Richard Mack, former sheriff from Graham County, Arizona. Sheriff Mack, thanks for being here. And then to his left, last but not least, is Neil Mammen, President, Values Advocacy Council, and he's also the co-founder of Every Black Life Matters. Welcome, Neil Mammen. All right, so here's how this is going to go. This is basically a conversation that's happening up here on these topics, and then we get to interject with some questions every now and then. I will be walking around the room. You can flag me down if you have a question that is related to the kind of current conversation that's happening. If you have a question that's kind of unrelated to that, hold it until we get to that topic or until we finish, the topics that are scheduled, and we'll get it at the end. But I think we'll probably be able to get to most questions as long as nobody up here goes on and on and on and on talking about anything, because I know nobody up here does that, so it'll be great. What else? So you just flag me down when you have questions. I will ask the questions. I am not going to be up here for the rest of the night. So the people who are online that are watching, they will just basically be hearing the voice of Old State Saloon, and you guys will be up here hearing the question from the people in the audience. I'm the voice of Old State Saloon. We are live tonight on X.com and Rumble. We usually get several thousand viewers on X.com. We just recently broke through 50,000 viewers or 50,000 followers on X, which was a very nice feat for us. And as a result, we are giving 50% off beers this coming Monday to celebrate breaking 50,000 followers. That was a promise that we made to everybody on X.com. Okay, so here's the thing. Everybody needs to be on X.com because that's the place where you can actually talk about things and not have your profile taken away from you like they did to us recently on Facebook. They took away our business profile, our business page that had 18,000 followers. Poof, gone. Why? Because a bunch of people who don't like us got together and false reported us as terrorists because we did a handgun giveaway at one of our events.
That's what terrorists do all the time.
That's what terrorists do all the time. Okay, so we're going to get started, and the first subject that we're going to hit here is going to be oaths. So, and anybody can start talking, but it's basically like, what is an oath? Do you remember your oath? What does it mean to you now compared to what it meant to you when you first started serving? And then where do you think the problem is today about oaths and people understanding the oath they're taking or not understanding it? So things like that. Anybody can start, and then we'll pick up, and then as questions come in, we'll bring the questions in. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
And then I do have one request for all of you up here who are on the panel, is when you speak, just make sure you're close to your mics when you speak so we can pick you up and edit a really great video together. Good?
Great.
All right, who wants to start?
I'll start on the oath.
Right on.
Sure. So Sheriff Richard Mack, former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona, and founder of the Constitutional Sheriff Peace Officers Association. So happy to have him here. We was at our event last night, and he's fantastic. Travels the country, and his organization educates and backs constitutional sheriffs. Oh, further away? Too close? Okay. So he's an educator, travels the country, and really explains the importance of the oath. That is key because sheriff is a noun, constitutional sheriff, adjective and noun, and he's all about defining that adjective.
How's that for your lesson in English tonight? It all boils down to everyone in office. The president has to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. Every public servant in Washington, D.C. has to do the same. And everyone, from the dog catcher through the governor, every public official, sheriffs, cops, every cop. Some places, some states, even teachers are required to take an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. So it boils down. Are you going to keep your word? And what does taking an oath to the Constitution presuppose? That you've actually read it and that you get it. Okay? So it's not that hard to understand. It's not rocket science. I admit there's a couple of places with some big words, but okay, look up disparage, okay, from the 9th Amendment. It's not that difficult, and it's pretty short. And if you don't have time, then just focus on the Bill of Rights. Okay? Thank you.
And going back to the oath, an oath is a solemn promise, and the Constitution requires all legislative, judicial, and executive officers of both the federal government and the states to take an oath or affirmation in support of the Constitution. Now, why is that? Because I've been asked, well, Doug, you bill yourself as a constitutional sheriff. Who are you to determine what is constitutional and what is not? Well, that takes us to the topic of the doctrine of lesser magistrate, which simply put is, well, it's baked into the oath. There's an expectation, a duty that anyone required to take the oath will push back on a perceived overreach. Sheriffs operate in real time, so they're ideally suited to interpose, stand between the overreach and the citizen. Constitutionally speaking, there's only one minority in this country, that's the individual, not groups of individuals. So when a sheriff, let's just say during COVID, sees your rights being stepped on by a higher authority, let's say it's the state, right, saying that you're non-essential, baked into his oath is that duty to interpose, to stand between the overreach and the citizen. Now, later a judge will determine whether the act was constitutional or not, but a sheriff should take the arrows in real time, let you keep your business open, let you keep your church open, okay? Because that a magistrate in the old language didn't mean judge, it meant any elected or appointed official. So a lesser magistrate, in this example, would be a sheriff pushing back, let's say, on the governor's emergency order. So that's what an oath is. I mean, an oath in action. An oath in action is interposition. If you perceive in good faith that this is overreach, then you need to interpose. I'll give you one quick example in Ada County where interposition did not happen but should have. There were several citizens at the county courthouse with subpoenas. In obedience to the subpoena, they are present and wanting to go through the door to the courtroom. Because they wouldn't wear a mask, they were ultimately arrested for failure to appear, which is a violation of Article 1, Section 18 of our state constitution. Remember, we take an oath to the U.S. Constitution and the state constitution. So in this real example that happened, rather than rush the crowd and arrest these people, and some people were injured, and then drag them through the same door they were denied entry without masks, what should have happened if they were constitutionally trained by a constitutional sheriff, they should have been taken arm in arm and delivered to the courtroom. If the judge didn't want to hold court because they wouldn't wear a mask, that's on the judge. My oath is not to a judge, not to a president, not to the governor, not to a mayor, to two constitutions. And so this actually happened in Ada County. So there's a lack of training there. And I'll tell you, in police academies, sheriff's academies, the Constitution is not really taught. You take an oath, it's like a photo opportunity. The oath should mean something. They teach case law. And the more you follow case law, the farther away from the Constitution you actually move. So we need to start on what is the Constitution, both Constitutions, what is an oath, and what does the oath look like in action. You don't just follow an order because the judge says to do this or the governor says to do that. And if you have any questions, then you call your sheriff. I'll take the final hit, so.
In that case,
that's a misnomer also, because courts don't make law.
Yep.
So there's no such thing as case law.
That's right.
It's a case precedent, and it goes case by case. Yep. But there's only one body of the three branches that makes law, and the first sentence after the preamble says, all legislative powers are vested in Congress. All. I think where I come from, that's 100%. Okay, so that's not give any support to the judges that they're not allowed to have.
And going with what you were just talking about, not only did those officers, they didn't act as a buffer protecting their rights, they actually violated their rights.
That's right.
And so not only are we supposed to protect those rights and stand as a buffer against violation of the rights, an oath means you don't violate the rights yourself as a sworn officer taking that oath. And again, who are we taking that oath to? But the oath is to the Constitution of the United States, and for us, me and you, Doug, the state of Idaho,
Right.
and for Christy, she took the same oath. But we're at the very end, we say, "So help me God." So it's a promise to God. In
Exactly.
my book, it's a promise to God. So that means something, and you can't take that lightly. Too many people do in this day and age.
Sheriff, have you had an instance yet where it's been a challenge for you as far as that oath goes?
Not for me personally, no. No, I wouldn't say, because it was an easy decision for me. But again, there could be more challenging instances, right? And I'm sure there's more to come. The thing is, you have a set of principles, you have your oath, you stand by them, and that's what makes the constitutional sheriff or constitutional legislature, Senate, or anybody. It's what makes up a proper servant for the people.
And it sounds like you're saying the more prepared you are for that difficult decision, the easier that decision would be to go along with what the Constitution says.
Yeah, you should be prepared, but there shouldn't be any second thoughts about it. Like, hey, should I do this or not? No, that shouldn't enter your mind, right? So I had an instance during COVID where they wanted me to kick a parishioner out of church because they weren't wearing a mask. I just said, no.
And then how do we get it so, and I know by the time you're sheriff and you're a constitutional sheriff, those should be the decisions. They should be relatively easy because you're ready and prepared. But how do we have it so all the way down the line, from every supervisor and then everybody out in the field who's working, everybody who's a narcotics officer to a bicycle officer to a traffic accident investigator, how do we make sure that all of them are educated enough and they're ready to make that decision and in time?
It's who you hire, and it's your background process. And you're not always going to get it right. So when you get the bad apples, you have to immediately weed them out. And it's your employees are a reflection of you. It's how you train them, and it's who you pick. And I only will hire people I know will support the Constitution and will not violate it. And that goes from my chief deputy on down. And I know that. And that's not to say we're going to see some mistakes along the way. They have to be addressed.
And I'd add to that, with all agencies have what's called field training officers, FTOs. And those are your influencers in the organization. And that's how you inculcate the culture of the agency into your rookies. And through repeated regular training on the Constitution and the oath, the culture starts to change. So you really have to make that the emphasis to make that the oath we're talking about center to your enforcement philosophy and the policies that you have in your organization. Because every contact either builds or erodes the public trust. The public trust is fragile and precious, and when we get it wrong, we need to own it. The enforcement lens needs to be the oath.
Well, and I can speak to it a little bit from a legislative point of view, because the actions that we take in the legislature are what they have to execute in the field. And so when I take the oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Idaho. That means that as I ponder each piece of legislation that comes before me, that Constitution is the guide and the standard that we go by. Now, I think it was my second year in the House of Representatives when I was on the State Affairs Committee. A piece of legislation came across our desk to take "So help me God" out of the end of the oath. And I think if you'll notice that when the legislature takes their oath this year, the first week in December, "So help me God" is not a part of that oath anymore. But there will be legislators who will stand on the floor and add that. And I will be one of those, because it's so important to remember that as we go through all this process, you know, even if it sounds like it's a really good idea, and I mean, we hear this all the time, oh, it's for the children, or it's for this, or it's for that, or it's going to make this better. The governor wants the Department of Health and Welfare to start making these visits with these babies in their homes when they come home from the hospital. Well, people have raised their children for millions of years without the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare coming into their homes to make sure that they know how to put the bottle in the baby's mouth. Is that constitutional? No. If it becomes legal, does that still make it right? No. Because if something's legal, that doesn't always mean it's moral. And so when we get it wrong on our end, that puts an extra burden on like our sheriffs and law enforcement to have to fix what we mess up. And so that's why I feel like my oath of office is important to me, but I also feel like that my oath of office spills over onto every citizen in the state of Idaho, because it's just as much your responsibility to police me and hold me to my oath of office as it is for me to hold myself to it. And my sheriff friends here can attest that, like, I get after them, you know. How should this work? Why is this constitutional? Why is it like that? And it's not because I'm picking on them, but I want to know. And I've taken Sheriff Mack's training, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer training. And I really believe it helped me be a better legislator, because that's what we're doing. Every decision I make affects your life, and every decision I make affects their job. It's a partnership in my mind for all of us to work together to make sure that the best outcome for you is what we achieve.
So I wanted to add, I mean, it really is disturbing that they took "under God" or "so help me God" out of that oath.
Well, we didn't pass that day because I caught it and pointed it out. But, you know, things that the point is that's happening. And our culture's moving from that.
But I want you to understand, I want everybody to understand the consequences of that. If you're not under the authority of God, who are under the authority of like, you know, I always play a game with people. I say, do you have constitutional rights? And everybody goes, yes. And I go, no, you don't. The Constitution doesn't give you any rights. There's not a single right that you get in the Constitution. The Constitution just protects rights that you already had. Well, why do you already have those rights? And where do they have to come from? You can only get the rights from an authority. Like, who's the only authority that can tell Hitler he has to treat the Jews equally? Who's the only authority that says the slave owner have to release the slaves? Is the only person who has authority over every single human being, over every single human being that has ever existed. And that can only be their creator. So what is the Constitution? What is government there? The government is there to secure those rights that you already have. Now, if you don't have an authority, you don't have unalienable rights, because then there's nobody giving unalienable rights. So people say, well, you're a Christian nationalist. Well, I'm not. I'm a Christian patriot. But let me tell you why that's so important that you are Christian in there. Because everything I've read, and I was born in Africa, grew up in the Middle East, and my parents are Indian, so I've been surrounded by Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists and every single religion. I teach apologetics, so I'm sort of an expert on religions. And I can tell you there's not a single religion in the world. Hinduism does not give everybody equal rights. The Hindu gods don't give equal rights. So they have a caste system. The Muslim God doesn't give people equal rights. Buddhism has no God, so there is no rights. So atheists have no God, so there are no rights. So it's only the Christian faith, the Christian Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible that gives you rights. Folks, you take God out of the Constitution, you take God out of your religion, you take Christian out of your nation, you don't have rights. Is that what you want? Because that's what you're going to get. We got it in communist China, we got it in the Soviet Union, we got it all over the world and in the Muslim countries.
That's exactly why they removed that. Because if you don't believe in God, there's nothing behind any legislation. But if you don't believe in God, I can take your rights away.
Yeah.
Much
Exactly.
easier, right?
Well,
If
the
I'm a
moral-
tyrant.
that moral
Right.
authority is
And-
gone. And we see that so much in our
Yeah.
society today, that moral authority is just leaving. So what do we have left to work with? I mean, where do you go from
It's all
there?
planned.
All down
You know, they say Donald Trump is the greatest threat to democracy. They're 100% correct because we don't have a democracy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm
We have
so
a
glad
republic.
you said that. I get so
And he
glad
is the
you
biggest
said
threat
that.
because they
Exactly.
want a democracy and he's not going to let them have it.
When I hear that, I think, good.
Yeah.
Well, on
They
the
use that word specifically, right?
on the sort of a topic of the culture war that you alluded to earlier, Christy, I was reflecting last night with the audience my memory when the 10 Commandments were removed from Julie Davis Park. I've lived here for 30 years, and that was a gift in 1964. I forget the civic organization that gifted it, but it sat in the same place for a long, long time. And now, whenever I bicycle by that spot, I always, without exception, stare at the grass where it used to be. So now it's on private property in front of a church, but it used to be on public property. So it's just evidence of your point.
Of that moral breakdown, and it comes from our families up.
Yeah.
You know, as strong families make strong communities, make strong states, make a strong country. And you remove that moral authority, and what do you have left? Well, we're seeing what we have left. You know, there's no respect for life. We see it in just even the attack on our unborn, the attack on our children, the transgender thing. In my mind, God created every individual in his image. Every one of us are created in his image. We might not all be perfect, but we're perfectly in his image. So when we start telling these children that God made a mistake, if you can't trust the physicalness of your body, if you can't trust what God created, what can you trust? And so by attacking that, again, we're decaying that moral authority, and then that just falls back on you all, making your job just that much harder. And so why it's even more important that we have sheriffs and lawmakers and elected officials that understand that moral authority of the Constitution and have the guts and the fortitude to stand behind it.
All right, lady and gentlemen of our panel, we're going to move on to the next topic, if we could. Unless anybody else has a question on oaths before we move on from oaths. We're going to talk about ranked choice voting next, which is something coming up in our next election that is super important because we don't want to go the way of places like Colorado and become purple and then blue. So if you would, maybe we can discuss whoever feels like they have a pretty good understanding of how to even explain well what ranked choice voting is. And then perhaps more people can chime in with why that's dangerous and some examples of some places who have implemented that and what has happened since then.
Well, the slang definition for rank, I think, is a foul odor or smell, and I'll give it to Neil.
So ranked choice voting just means that when you go to the polling booth, you might have 10 choices and you have to mark them first, second, third, fourth, fifth. The problem is, one, this is the easiest system to game. We already have trouble with our current system where, you know, we're doubting the machines. You can't really do ranked choice voting without a machine. So first of all, we're kind of abdicating our human responsibility to a machine written by some programmer in Silicon Valley. Actually, I wish it was Silicon Valley. It's probably in communist China. But besides that, you have this problem so if you want to verify the machine did the right job, that's going to take you months to do it. So first of all, that's a mistake. But the real thing that we're going to see in this ranked choice voting proposition that's going to show up this November, I believe, is really, or October, November,
Proposition 1.
Proposition 1 is really that they want jungle primaries. Now, look, I'm a political and religious refugee from California with good reason because of the jungle primaries. That means a Republican in California will never win. You're always going to get whatever the elites have decided for you to pick. And so we have a system that works here. Why are we messing with it? They want to mess with the system. Why? Because they can't win here. Now, of course, I have to take that back. They do win here because anyone who wants to win as a Democrat knows they can't win as a Democrat, so they just merely put an R next to their name and they run as a Republican. And that's why 70%, used to be 70% of our legislature actually votes like liberals. And we changed that this last election by getting at least 8 of them out of there. So that's a quick introduction to ranked choice voting.
Another thing that's not known about that, the law they're trying to create through Prop 1, is it requires Dominion voting machines.
Oh, yes, yeah.
All right. Why? Yeah.
Because it
Just look at the
guarantees
20
cheating, that's
yeah,
why.
It does, exactly. And the price tag behind it,
Oh, yeah.
huge.
40 million.
Yeah, $40 million.
Why don't they give me? I'm an electrical engineer. I could design those machines really well, but they won't give it to me because I'm not friends
Don't
with
offer
certain
that
people.
up. Do not tell them that. We do not want this.
I know, but
Don't do that. See, ranked choice, when you do the open primary, so I'm not a big football fan. You know, I mean, I can take it or leave it. I know.
That is un-American.
I'm a rodeo girl. There's nothing more American than rodeo. I'm a rodeo girl, so I'm not a big football fan. But what the open primary does is, the way it is now, we all know the Republicans get together and last year we caucused, or we have a primary and we vote our person, our quarterback. And then we have the Democrats pick their quarterback and the Constitution Party pick their quarterback. So I asked one of my Green Bay Packer fan friends, who doesn't even let people in their house if they don't like the Green Bay Packers. I said, well, let's let the coaches of the Chiefs pick the quarterback for the Packers. I got kicked out of their house. But that's exactly what this is. This is allowing everybody to pick somebody else's quarterback. And then on the ranked choice voting, you're being forced to vote for someone that you would not necessarily vote for. I mean, there are people that are going to be on that ballot that I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, I wouldn't vote for them if there wasn't anybody to vote for.
Is the ballot still good if you just vote
No,
for one?
it's not. That's where I was going
get
at. If
thrown
you
out.
don't fill in all the things, that's the other thing, is the ballots can be spoiled for so many reasons. And then the Constitution guarantees one vote for each person, not 15 votes for everybody that votes. So there's just a lot of problems with it, a lot of different issues that just make it not work.
Well, the biggest problem is that it's the reason Lisa Murkowski won in Alaska.
Yes, and Alaska's doing away with it. Most of the states and provinces in different areas that have picked up ranked choice voting are now working to get rid of it.
Good.
It's cumbersome, it can be gamed, it takes 10 times longer to find the results of it. It's technically unconstitutional because of the one-man
with the
vote.
jungle primaries, the open primaries, the biggest thing, and I talked to our old Solicitor General, I said, well, to me, it seems like it's a violation of our right to gather. It's basically a Bill of Rights issue, because we have the right to gather with our own franchise. So the Republicans are a franchise. So we should be able to gather with our franchise and pick our guy. They can gather in their franchise. How dare does the government get to pick a private party's own person?
Exactly.
That's unacceptable. Now, if you don't want to play with us, fine. Put your name in a different hat, right? And in this case, like with Doug, he is doing that, but he really should be the Republican candidate, but it just didn't happen that way. So we're going to work, he's going to work within the system that way. And that's
Well,
the
and
way
it doesn't
should
stop
be.
anybody from voting because, the Republicans hold a closed primary because we want to pick our own quarterback. I think anybody can vote in the Democrat primary because they don't care.
Because they're going to pick their own. They're going to decide on their own.
Anyway, but you can only vote once. You can vote in the Republican or the Democrat. You can't vote in more than one. So it doesn't, this business when they start talking about it that, well, there are people who don't get to vote because of the closed primaries. No, you can vote. If you're a Republican, you vote Republican. If you're not, you can take your pick of what other one you're going to vote for. No one is stopped from voting in the primary. No one. Ever. Even in the caucus, when the Republicans caucus. If you're a registered Republican, you can come and vote in the caucus. I don't know what the Democrats did. Maybe I should know that. But
They have to cheat to win.
is that
Yeah,
what it is?
exactly.
To get this on the ballot, they cheated.
All right, we have an audience question here.
William Edwards, and I was told I'm a cow,
He was
so
what?
I was part of the herd that moved here. If you don't know what a cow is, there you go, Californian, Oregon, and Washingtonian.
I'm a refugee as well.
Thank you, sir. A question I have, and it had to do with the voting and how it got here. I unfortunately still registered to vote in one of those cow states. I'm soon to be voting here. My mother-in-law and my wife are voting here, and they did in this last one. The misrepresentation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it, that even got this onto the ballot here. And I'm like this event tonight, I've been at a few others, General Flynn's, both sheriffs last night popped in for a minute, and I flew back from Shametown, Washington just to be here. and I'd hoped to see this saloon filled. And you talked about voting. Somehow the other side gets people out to vote, and the side that's with the Constitution, with God, with natural-born Idahoans, okay, and this legislature, ma'am, that thank you for representing strongly, is trying to do the right thing. If we don't get more people to show up between now and the date it is to vote, they will be misinformed about this very topic right here, and it unfortunately might have a chance to breathe life after November 5th.
Well, one of the key issues there, the reason Democrats get so many people out, they even get the dead to come vote. So,
Yeah.
I think one of the big problems there is the apathy of the church, actually. And I see Neil smiling over there. I was going to have you address this one, sir, because really there is a lot of apathy in the church and a non-participation attitude that seems to take place, and it seems to have taken place for decades, which is probably why we're in the situation we're in. Neil, do you have any comments on that?
I have a whole book worth of comments on it, yeah. So yeah, I wrote a book called Jesus is Involved in Politics, Why Aren't You, Why Isn't the Church? And this last election, we had a bunch of pastors who got involved. So if you are going to a church where the pastor, actually I've got three now, and three things to say, and I'll say it quickly. One, if you're going to a church where the pastor is not involved politically, you probably need to find a church where the pastor is. So we have a guide to that. It's called mychurchfinder.org. And if you're not on there, we want you to get on there. If you're a pastor, you can sign in. If you're not a pastor, you can send an email to your pastor on it. It says send an email to pastor. Basically, we rank the churches on there as A, B, and C churches and would not recommend. The would not recommend churches are not biblical churches. Excuse me, they're not biblical churches, or they promote any of these homosexuality, transgenderism, all that.
Would you call that rank church voting?
Yeah, ranked church. There you go. Yep, ABC. But except you vote yourself. So then the C churches are churches that are biblically sound. The B churches are biblically sound, and they teach about CRT and homosexuality and all that. And then the A churches are biblically sound, teach about homosexuality and transgenderism, but they're also politically active, meaning they send out voter guides. They send out this because the pastors have been afraid of getting involved in politics because of the LBJ, the Johnson Amendment in 1957. So what we really want to do is we want to get churches to be involved because churches are the hub. And think about this. So we started a group here called Pastors Legislative Advisory Council. And what it is a group of about 16, now 17 pastors, hopefully 18 with the pastor sitting here, pastors that will be willing to walk into the Senate or the legislature and say, look, this is the bad thing you're doing, and we're going to talk about it on Sunday till the election, and we're going to use your name too. And they're also going to advise their congregation. If you want to find out more about our organization, go to BibleVoter.org, BibleVoter.org. Sign up on there. We send a voter guide out for people that allows you, and it's vetted by the pastors, the 17 pastors, and they get to look through it and decide how they want to respond to it, and they spread amongst their people. So this is the way, the church needs to get involved. And think about a more powerful organization than the church. We meet once, maybe twice a week, and we can get the message out for free, whereas the legislator would have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that same message out.
Which is why they want to tell us to keep politics out of your church, right?
Exactly. And so they brainwashed our pastors to believe that. But here's my question to pastors. What part of Eli, Samuel, John the Baptist's job is not your job? What about Nathan, who went and told King David he did the wrong thing? What about Elijah and Elisha, who fought with Ahab and Jezebel? What part of that is not your
Didn't you
job?
try to do that?
Jeremiah
Jeremiah, yeah.
got thrown in the dungeon.
Yep.
So if we can get the church activated, then morality will win on election day. And if we don't, then we run the risk of letting Satan legislate.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's a book that a friend of mine gave me that's written by one of the Mormon leaders, and he said, and it's such an appropriate thing that I read, he says, Satan wants to kill the most number of people. The best way to kill the largest number of people, because the people are God's prize, is to be in control of the government, because nobody can kill more people than government. Mm-hmm. So Satan wants government.
All right, anything else on this topic of ranked choice voting?
Vote no.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No.
To be clear, this.
try to
All right.
explain
Get the
to me.
word out.
This is gonna be cheesy, but on 3, we'll have all of you look in this camera right here and say, "Vote no on Proposition 1." Vote no on Proposition 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Vote no on Proposition 1.
Perfect. Okay, we have one more question here.
Regarding the Johnson Amendment of 1954, which restricts churches' freedoms, is there anything that we can do to repeal it?
Well, actually, yeah, Congress can repeal it any time. I don't know why they haven't done it already. But here's the thing: I think it's called Pulpit Freedom Sunday. I think it's in September, one of the weeks in September. There's about 3,000 churches, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2,000, that preach a very political sermon. They print it out and they mail it to the IRS with registered mail, and they email it to the IRS and they say, "Come and get us." And the IRS won't touch it because the IRS knows the minute it gets to the Supreme Court, it's going to be deemed unconstitutional, and it's gone. They'd rather you be afraid of something that isn't been declared. So the reality is that no church, I think there was one church that got in trouble because of it, because the Clintons were involved, but they actually didn't end up just going to court and nothing happened. And there's about 5 different Christian organizations of lawyers who will defend you for free if you get caught in that situation.
So I have a question about that. That brings up a question in my mind about our constitutional sheriffs. So that's a federal thing. My first question is, who would enforce that? I mean, who's going to turn them in? Who's going to enforce it? So then if those charged with enforcing that comes into your county to enforce something like that, what happens then?
So in this case, it would be the IRS coming and trying to repossess your
So what
property.
The
happens then?
church.
Yeah, how it interpose. What was that?
Just say no.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
No.
Yeah, the sheriff should be nullifying all of that, and if the IRS will simply follow the rules of the policies of the sheriff's office, he has to check with the sheriff before he comes in and does anything anyway. But the best defense for the IRS is the sheriff standing in the way. Doctrine of interposition.
I think if you want to fire up a population, the feds come in and shut down a church, that would be it, right?
Yeah, it's already happened.
But that, again, that's the importance of our law enforcement understanding their position, understanding what they can and cannot do when it comes to the feds coming into their county, and then having the intestinal fortitude to actually do it.
That's right. And like Sheriff Mack had mentioned, and it's in a video called "The Sheriff." It was related to COVID, and it was not the feds; it was the state trying to shut down a church. And the sheriff used the doctrine of lesser magistrate, interposed, and deputized the entire congregation.
Nice.
So I would do that too.
Where was that?
New Mexico. Yeah.
So I misspoke on the Fed shutting down a church
Oh, wow, I gotta look at
because they did at Waco and they burnt.
Oh, yeah, that's
everybody,
right.
Killed them all.
Yes.
Yeah, and folks,
So-
I've written about that a lot too, and Sheriff Kendrick and I have talked about it. If Ruby Ridge, if the sheriff there had remained in charge, and in Waco, if the sheriff had remained in charge, we would have never heard of Randy Weaver or David Koresh, and the law still would have been enforced. And so this is a typical example with a hit and run mentality of federal agents that come in and run roughshod, and they don't live there; they just leave. And so, without question, if the sheriffs had been in charge, we would have never had those incidents. There would have been no murders.
All right, we're going to move on to the final planned topic, and then after that, we'll open it up to any other topic for a period of time that anybody has questions about. If you do have a question that you don't want to ask on the microphone, you can text it to this number that's right up here, 208-244-0648, and then I will read it off. So you can either raise your hand and ask the question on the microphone or text it to that number. Final planned subject is drag queens. And really, the point of this is not really necessarily totally about drag queens. It's about protecting our children from a lot of things that are happening in today's society, whether it's drag queen reading library shows or forced child vaccinations or overreach of child protective services or things like that. So on that topic of protecting our children and what we're looking at the next election, What kind of comments do you have, our panel?
Keep it out of libraries, keep it out of schools. Our elementary schools all the way up to the universities have been taken over by Marxists. And the one thing they want to do to go about their goal, which is full-blown communism under a technocracy in the United States, is they break down that they attack the family, they attack the individual, they talk at every point they attack God's creation, but they attack the children and more in so many ways. If they can't kill them, they want to confuse them and get them to commit suicide. How many of the last school shooters have been transgender? I mean, I think at least the last 5, right? It's horrible. And we've got to take back our schools, school boards, and that's where the indoctrination starts, and that's where the confusion on these kids starts, and it even brainwashes the parents, a lot of them too.
Well, they fear. They use
Yeah.
fear. Well, if you don't do this, your kid's going to kill themselves, or if you don't do this, your child this or that, and no.
So the statistic they use is that a child who is transgender and if you don't kowtow to what they're saying, they have a 20% more chance of committing suicide. But the real statistic is 10 years after they've transitioned, they have almost the percentage of kids, it goes up by 2,000%.
Yes.
So rather than being 0.2%, 20 times more chance of committing suicide if you go through that. But the reason why it's there is because, and I won't name the hospitals, but the hospitals make $400,000 per child that transitions over the 10 years of transition.
And they're a lifetime.
Yeah.
They
die
can't
after
leave
that.
their-
Yeah, but
If they
until
live
they
a
die,
lifetime.
right, if they live
The
long enough.
pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
they never.
So-
When I brought that bill, introduced that bill in Idaho in 2019, people said to me, "Oh, that doesn't happen in Idaho. That you don't see that in Idaho. It doesn't happen." And I'm thinking, well, it's happening everywhere else. And I had parents call me from other states and stuff. So we're going to be preactive. We're going to make sure that it doesn't happen in Idaho. And when we had that first hearing on that, 700 doctors and medical people and psychiatrists and stuff showed up to testify. And I'm like, I thought this didn't happen in Idaho. But it was already on its way to being an industry.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If they get 2,500 kids, that's $1 billion
Oh, yeah.
for the hospitals. Why do you think that they're pressuring everybody?
Right. And then the kids, if they get halfway into it or partway into it and then decide they've made a mistake, the pressure to not stop transitioning or the pressure to detransition after they get there is just massive. I mean, they're ostracized, they're picked on. And I think social media is really bad because if you read some of the interviews of, especially the girls that do this, well, where did you get the idea for it? Well, it was on social media. I saw these kids on Twitter. I saw this girl who wasn't happy with the way she looked, wasn't happy with the way her body looked. She just knew she was in the wrong body because she didn't feel good about herself. So then she gets on social media and all of these on social media, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. Look what has happened to me. I'm in the body I was originally meant to be in. Because social media, so much of it is just fake and phony, and it's not reality. You don't reach out and touch that human being that's talking to you, and they can say and do and present anything they want. And I think it's a social ill. I mean, I know we all use it. I'm guilty of it too. But we have to be so careful, and especially with our children, to know what they're looking at and to talk to them about what they're seeing. The relationship between a parent and a child is sacred. God, personally, I believe, because I have 5 of them, that before we got here, I entered into a contract with my children that they chose me to be the one that would provide their body and guide them through this. I believe that relationship between a parent and a child is a sacred thing. And it's our jobs as parents to make that the most important thing we do. It's not important that they participate in every sport that comes along. It's not important that they have Louis Vuitton and Coach shoes and all this other stuff. It's not important that they go on 16 cruises a year. What's important is that when that child doesn't feel good about itself, or when something happens at school or they're picked on and bullied, they know that when they go home, that they can talk to their parents and their parents are going to love them through whatever happens. And I just think that's so important. And all of this stuff just works to destroy that relationship. You know, they go to school and the teachers and the school nurses, the COVID shot thing. You know, that's why Rob Beiswinger ran for office, because they were telling the kids at school, well, you don't have to tell your parents to get the COVID shot. That destroys that trust between that parent and that child.
In terms of the drag queen, like, you know, drag queen hour and these parades and that sort of thing, I understand the argument of the First Amendment right to assemble, but when you look at state code 18-1508, and I can't go into great detail because it's too complicated, but Christy and I had a discussion on how to improve that law, but you see words in there and words have meanings. You see the word lewd or lascivious. Lascivious defined as filled with or showing sexual desire, lewd, lustful, lascivious acts and thoughts. Lewd, obscene or vulgar, sexually unchaste or licentious. Licentious means lacking moral restraint in sexual conduct. Words mean things. Screening attorneys, for your prosecutors, if a report is made by law enforcement at one of these events and they argue that the elements of the crime are met, the attorney has discretion. Now, is your attorney influenced by social justice or criminal justice? The problem with our culture nowadays is that social justice is undermining criminal justice. It's infected the lens. And so now we have this moral relativism and intimidation, you know, against law enforcement and prosecutors. And so there may be a crime if you read the language carefully and you reconcile that against some behavior that you're observing and you make an arrest. What are the consequences of that arrest? Of course, the media is going to be all over law enforcement. The prosecutor wringing her, you know, his or her hands. Am I going to file on this or have discretion? What are the pressures in the media? So our culture has become so unraveled. There are no absolutes anymore, it seems. And so it's a real challenge for both law enforcement and the prosecutors anymore, because the court of public opinion seems to have more weight than the laws passed by our legislature. And so I had one idea with Christy to improve this law. And it's a balance because there's a First Amendment right, but there's also community standards and moral standards that were made by legislators long ago, right? You can look at the laws and it shows what dates these laws came into effect. But that is the challenge. You have this imbalance between the intent of the law as written and lacking courage to apply the law. And then you have this cultural anarchy.
Well, and that's a perfect
Bingo.
example of, even though it's legal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's moral.
Right.
Well, it's also a good example of why you need good sheriffs, because if you have a law that's not upheld, what's the value of it? I mean, it's you said that last night, right? Yeah, it might be in here, but if there's nobody going to uphold this, then what are you going to do?
Everything the Germans did to the Jews in World War II was legal.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
They passed it through their Supreme Court.
Well, the gun registration that they use for, you know, good people registered their firearms and stuff. And then when the regime changed and those good people weren't useful anymore, they're the ones they went after. And the way I
collected those
understand
guns.
it, there was a shoot to kill order. They didn't even have to ask. They just, oh, you've got your gun.
You mean the regime changed from Biden to Kamala?
I wasn't going to go there, but I was thinking years
That's what
ago.
she would have.
So I have to tell you guys a story talking about drag queens. So 2 years ago, there was a drag festival, which is coming up again, and advertised on it was a drag kids event. So I was kind of upset, and I called up a pastor friend of mine, and I said, hey, we need to gather a bunch of pastors and do something about this, because it's, we've got to talk to someone about it. And we knew it didn't make sense to talk to the mayor, because the mayor was behind this thing. So about 12 pastors got together, and we said, you know what, we should talk to the sheriff. Sheriff Mack Clifford. And so we said, great, he's a Republican, he should be on our side. So I sent him an email and we said, look, we just want to talk to you about this. We think that this is, we want at least some sort of declaration that you're going to be there, your guys are going to be there watching it. And then one of the pastors, so we had about 2 or 3 meetings, the 12 pastors getting together, and one of the pastors said, I'm going to go down and ask the sheriff for a meeting because he hasn't replied to your email. I said, yeah, he maybe didn't get it or something. So he goes down and he goes to the front desk, and the front desk says, the sheriff's not here. And this pastor said, no, I just saw him in the back. And he says, well, he's not going to meet with you. He says, well, there are about 12 of us. We want to meet with him. He says, he has no jurisdiction. And now this, when I heard this, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, what do you mean you have no jurisdiction? You're the sheriff. And I have a very good friend who used to go on car rides with, he was a reserve deputy. He went on those rides with Matt Clifford, busting down doors in downtown Boise. And he's telling us he has no jurisdiction. So I said, oh, wow. And so he comes out and he's doing a video and two deputies come out and they chase him off the property. They kick him off the public property because he's shooting a video trying to tell us what just happened. So folks, I mean, 12 pastors want to meet with you. And some of these are like 3,000 member churches, right? You should at least have the common decency to come and say, yeah, I'll meet with you. Maybe I can't help you exactly the way you want, but I'm going to meet with you because you are part of the community.
Well,
so
who are our bosses again?
I know.
Exactly.
Right?
If it's one person that
Yeah.
comes to your office and takes the time out of their busy life to come to your office and talk to you about something, you better damn well listen to them because that's who you
Absolutely.
represent.
At least take
That's
the complaint.
your job.
I mean, I understand if you can't meet with every single person, but at least take the complaint.
But
at least honor it, right?
the people can take away his jurisdiction permanently.
They absolutely can.
It's called the vote. We have term limits. We have control over this situation. We just need to go vote.
Yeah.
And we need to be informed voters because there's not anything worse than someone who goes and votes
So-
the way they do because their second cousin's third wife told them that's the person to vote for.
So I want to hand that situation over to the sheriffs and say, what should you have done? What should he have done?
Well, first of all, you have the opportunity to fire him and hire me on November 5th.
That was my point.
The code he just read applies to that situation.
Yeah, yeah. And although this law, I'm sorry. Although this law can be improved, and Christy and I discussed it, and she agreed. And again, that's too complicated to get into now. But even as it's written now, what I would have done is, first of all, talk to you all, and second, because I share your concern, I would probably have invested some deputies down there to monitor. Now, again, it's a balance between the First Amendment and this law, right? So it's not about endorsing a lifestyle or whatever. It's about behavior. You know, the law, right? A crime is defined as an act or omission in violation of a law prohibiting or requiring something, right? So each law has elements of the crime. Put some detectives down there, monitor the situation. If the elements of the crime are met, take action. I have jurisdiction in the city. The city's in the county.
Yep.
So to say he doesn't have jurisdiction, no, the state code, he has the duty to enforce it, and he has the jurisdiction in the city. So you were correct in your want to meet with him. He was wrong to ignore you, and he was wrong to say he doesn't have jurisdiction.
If you're making bread and you include all the ingredients and you get a loaf of bread, it's a loaf of bread, right? So if you meet all the elements to this crime, you have a crime.
Yeah, and these are kids.
They said they were going to do it,
Yeah,
too.
the rest of the story is that we had 800 people besieged. You know, they were on our mailing list. 4 of the sponsors backed out. The mayor came and said she was canceling it. I didn't trust her. So we told everybody on our mailing list, go, if you can stomach it, go with a camera and take videos. And somebody did send videos, but again, we had no sheriff to enforce it, so.
I saw photographs of the Nampa thing that they
Yeah.
had, and it was like a pride event or something. Anyway, they advertised it as family friendly. The photos I saw were anything
But friendly.
right? And they are coming for your kids. They said they're coming for your
Oh,
kids.
yeah,
The
they
San
say about it.
Francisco Gay Choir sat there and taunted everybody and said they were.
They warned
And
us.
boy, howdy are they, with a vengeance.
All right, I do have some more questions that were typed in. How can we beat the corrupt portion of cops and sheriffs that are in Idaho? It seems like the bully system may still be in force here.
Well, first, don't ever get in the thing that we're going to get every county, every sheriff in the country out of the 3,086. Our goal is to get 1,000, 1/3. In the Revolutionary War, John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail and said, 1/3 of the people support the war a third of the people are completely apathetic, and a third of the people stay on the side of King George III. And that's pretty much how it lines up today. I know we can win this, folks, if we just get a third. So every state look at it and say, 66% we're not going to get. But I honestly believe that the percentages will go our way. If you get 1,000 sheriffs in the country that are doing this, many more will come on board. But getting that first nucleus of 700-800 has been really difficult. And that's why I've asked all of you and all of you watching, please join the CSPOA. It's the only peaceful and effective solution that we have left. Go to cspoa.org, become a member of our posse, and be part of the solution. We need to realize that this solution is in our hands, and we can be a part of it, every one of us. And the sheriff, you shouldn't be expecting, well, okay, sheriff, go get him. Oh, man, and then you don't stand with him?
Yeah.
No, you've got to be a part of it. And volunteering to be on his posse is essential. So let's go get him.
One of the things that came to mind with that question, Mark, was these First Amendment audits that you can see on YouTube. And I'm just disgusted sometimes by the way some police officers act. And by the way, I like to use the term peace officer rather than police officer. I want my deputy sheriffs to understand, A, they're deputy sheriffs, why that's different, and two, I want them to behave like peace officers, meaning you use the least amount of force or government authority to resolve a situation. So that's a cultural issue. So to answer this question, I mean, one agency at a time, leadership, it comes down to that, and coaching and teaching with a servant's heart, understanding the things we're talking about tonight, the oath of office, and just how you conduct yourself. I mean, I expect my deputies to protect themselves, always, sort of own the ground you're standing on. If you don't feel safe and the elements are there to pat down somebody for weapons, if you have to cuff them because they're so excited and out of control, fine. Control the situation. But again, use the least amount of force and understand it's not against the law for someone to videotape you on their phone. Contempt of cop over those kind of things is so upsetting to me. Or in Idaho especially, if you're open carrying or even concealed carrying, I don't need a permit. That is a right. And some of these people from other states, they call in dispatch, oh, this guy's got a gun, he's walking down the street. Well, my dispatchers in that situation say, well, we don't respond to lawful behavior.
I like that. That's good. Well, the most important thing is to know your candidates, get behind your candidates that you know are constitutional sheriffs, and vote. And talk to the people in your neighborhood. Talk to, when you go to the grocery store and you have the opportunity, or when you're in your church, or wherever it is you congregate or meet, at the bar, I don't care where it is. People always talk about politics, and we've been shamed into saying that we shouldn't discuss politics, that we shouldn't hurt anybody's feelings. And as conservatives, we think we need to be good and proper and nice and not hurt anybody's feelings. Well, no, that's part of what's got us where we are. So we need to be strong, and we need to be resolute, and we need to say right is right and wrong is wrong. And we need sheriffs and legislators and governors or whatever, but bottom up government, our school boards, our county, our city councils, our county commissioners, and our sheriffs. That's where it starts. And we will only save this country one state at a time through that bottom-up government, because there is not anything Congress can do right now to save this. It's up to
Amen
we
to
the
that.
people.
That's absolutely correct.
Personally, every person has a responsibility to save the republic.
I put it county by county, state by state.
Exactly.
That's the only solution left.
Bullies, badge bullies, but bullies are bullies because they're insecure of their own abilities and their own wisdom. And so they're insecure. And they overcompensate for it by bullying other. When they get into government, they become tyrants. But they always try to find themselves into positions of power no matter what occupation they have. They'll be the supervisor at Walmart. But they love to become cops if they can. We have to weed them out. How many people would rather be pulled over by a deputy sheriff as opposed to a city police officer? Most people would rather be pulled over by a deputy sheriff because they're more personable. They're less likely to have an adverse reaction to the contact with the peace officer. So, and deputy sheriffs, the sheriff is accountable to the people directly, whereas the police department is not. He is appointed by the mayor, so there's a buffer zone there, and they're more inclined to enforce social justice as like Doug was saying, as opposed to criminal justice. So it's a lot in sheriff's offices. We have to weed them out, but it starts with having a constitutional sheriff.
Sheriff Kendrick, so the person writing the question seems to allude that there is a corrupt portion. Now, there's always going to be a corrupt portion because anything that's made up with people is going to have sin involved with it because we're all sinners and everything, and police officers are not, they're not going to be void of that. They're going to be people who make mistakes and sometimes blatantly sin. But the corruption now, so I guess I would ask you, are you aware of a significant corruption problem in any of the peace officers in Idaho?
Well, I had to root it out from the department when I took over, Owyhee County Sheriff's Office. By the way, it's an office, elected office, not a department. Common misconception. But I had a lot of corruption to root out, and there were a lot of self-serving people. A lot of people that thought that the badge somehow gave them some sort of power as opposed to servanthood, because it makes you a servant. And you will find corruption throughout all 50 states, throughout even the state of Idaho, where you have counties, jurisdictions where you have individual peace officers, or should I say badge bullies, that are self-serving instead of serving the public. And the public needs to hold them accountable. And if the sheriff won't listen, then he needs to be sent packing. And you don't have to wait till the election. If you can get enough people going, you can do a recall.
And the coroner can arrest the sheriff.
Yes.
The only person who can arrest the sheriff. And do they
Yes.
have to get a warrant from the prosecutor to make that happen? Is that how that goes?
Well, either that or maybe a judge. There's also a term called a lisser, and it's an ancient term or a very old term. So if the coroner for some reason is not available, the judge can appoint, I think I'm pronouncing it right, an lisser. Yeah, and so and that's a good thing, because while sheriffs need relative autonomy to run interference to protect your rights, we don't want someone to have absolute power, right?
We don't want a dictator.
We don't want a dictator, but we want it to be impractical and sort of difficult to put the brakes on the sheriff, because if he's acting righteously in defense of your liberties, if he can be stopped immediately, then what's the point in having a sheriff? He has to have some relative autonomy to, again, run interference. But if he's really rogue, of course, he needs to be arrested and held accountable.
What's that check and balance?
Yeah.
So this is all biblical. I ask people, when was the first time we heard of a republic in the history of mankind? And everybody says Rome or Greece or something. It is actually not. It's actually Exodus 18. Exodus 18, God establishes the first republic in the history of mankind. It's every 10 people elect one representative, every 50 of those elect one. It goes all the way up to Moses. So that's the very first republic ever in the history of mankind. And everything was supposed to be done at the lowest level. If you couldn't resolve it at the lowest level, then it went up and it went up until finally the cases that couldn't be resolved anywhere got to Moses. And that was how the republic was organized. And that's how our republic is organized. So if you find a corrupt representative here, you can appeal above him. But he's supposed to stop this thing from happening, from corrupt people going down. And so you are one of those lines of defense. And you can see that layering done in America. And we see it with the PCs, the councilmen and the precinct councilmen here in America. We see that layering constantly. So it's a very biblical thing, and it's given to us by God. That's God's plan for government, by the way.
All right, the next comment's from somebody with a California phone number in the room. I was listening to Glenn Beck today. He stated that the apathy of the church is what is holding us back in winning our elections. Only 3 in 10 religious Christians show up to vote. How can we encourage pastors to preach how imperative it is to show up at the polls and vote in person? Pastors like Jack Hibbs are succeeding. We must mirror this behavior from the pulpits in Idaho. Personally, I would add, and I would answer this question, and I would say, just like our country is in need of we the people to stand up and be the government and dictate what the government is doing and not be lorded over and ruled by them, the churches need the saints to stand up and say, we need to get involved in politics, and they need to say that to the leaders of the church. The leaders of our church, just like the police officers, peace officers, deputies, they're not perfect people. They don't always make perfect decisions, and they can go down a path that gets away from having the church be involved and be salt and light and be on every school board, on every health board, and be there as an example, a shining light to the community. And they can get away from that thinking very much about just their church and their brand and keeping people safe inside that brand. But as the church, as Christ's bride, we need to be out there in the community and making sure that we are shining light on deception and shining light on evil, exposing it, and putting people who have good moral, biblical principles in office to make the laws and legislate and enforce the laws and everything else. If the people don't get involved, if the people of the church don't stand up and say to the leaders, we need to do this biblically, then it's not going to happen.
Can I add to that? Go to mychurchfinder.org, find an A church. But I just want to say, for people who don't think that Christians should be involved in politics, if it wasn't for Christians involved in politics, it wasn't for pastors involved in politics, we still have slavery, we still have gladiatorial combat, child sacrifice, temple prostitution, child prostitution, bride kidnapping, cruel treatment to animals, cruel treatment to people, cruel treatment to prisoners. We'd have the sacrificing of twins, or the killing of twins superstitiously. We'd have throwing widows in their husband's funeral pyre. All these laws and thousands of others were changed only because pastors and Christians got involved in politics and changed it. And while they were doing that, they were the most hated people on the face of the planet.
And I don't know why Christians would think that they're not involved. I've never talked to Christians, I'm just not supposed to get involved because I'm Christian. I think it's just kind of laziness and misinformation out there. But to all those Christians, to the 70% who don't vote, repent!
Love it. All right, next question. We are strongly against the Convention of States because we don't want them to mess with our Constitution. What do you all think?
That's an easy one.
Well, I'm
Let's go
strongly
around.
against the Convention of States. The Constitution isn't broken.
Yep.
If we actually followed the Constitution, we wouldn't have the problems we have now. I mean, so it's the people that serve that make the crazy laws they make on a federal level and a lot of times on the state level. That's what's broken, not the principle of the thing, not the way it was set up.
What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. If you, in 2020, the way they screwed with our elections, they would do that. You would, danger. It's fine the way it is. Just enforce the laws we have on the books and protect. The Constitution's supposed to protect the Second Amendment, the First Amendment. They're attacking all of them. It's written just fine, but they're just running roughshod over the whole dang thing.
Yeah, it is constitutional, but I don't support doing it.
Well, now, isn't it constitutional in that if the people feel like the government that they have needs to be torn down, completely started over and rebuilt?
Not necessarily.
Well,
That's kind of the way I understood it, but I could be wrong.
bring up Article 5 there.
Yeah, it makes some pretty powerful statements in there, no question about it. Article 5, because it says it needs permission to actually be able to do it. The Congress, whenever 2/3 both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states. So you have to submit an application. They don't seem like they talk about that. The people pushing it don't talk about that part too much, or what it really means. And then that call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid in all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution. So they can do parts of the Constitution, not the whole thing. But this is extremely dangerous because, folks, it boils down to one thing, and I'm totally against it. Okay, you're right. It's constitutional. It's in there. You know how many times we've used this in American history? And this is not the time. Because do you know who they're going to be the delegates? It's not going to be you. It's not
No.
going to be any of us. It's going to be mainstream. Okay? It's going to be mainstream Democrats and Republicans.
Godless.
There's going to be rhino Republicans there, and you're supposed to trust them. Oh, and these other people that want a con, they'll say, it cannot be. It's against the law to have a runaway convention. They can do anything
There
they
are
want
no
once they're
rules.
there. I know.
No
They
rules.
get to
There's
say
no
what
guidelines.
the rules
There's no
are.
nothing.
Folks, do not
Sir?
fall for this.
If I could interject
It's
something,
a trap.
I'm not trying to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
I have learned that there are two constitutions. One of them is operated and run by the corporate, I'll just call them the black hats.
I've never seen what that one is.
Well, one of them is the Constitution for the United States, and the other is the Constitution of the United States. So all of our district courts and those judges, pretty much going up to Supreme Court, operate under the corporate constitution. So when you bring up your, let's say, an issue in court and you say, but what about my constitutional rights? They won't hear you because they're operating under their corporate constitution. So that's why we keep screaming, what about my constitutional rights? Until we can show people there is a difference and get rid of this paid for corporate constitution that's operated and supported by foreign countries and their money, then, you know, they're always using the language to confuse us.
Okay,
The
so
all caps.
which one are we for, the of or the for? Which one do we like?
Okay,
Which one's the good one?
I'm pretty sure of the United States is the good one.
I've never seen
For,
the four.
I've never.
Well, actually,
right here.
yeah. These are all misnamed. It's not the Constitution of the United States. If you open the document, it's the Constitution for the United States, a plurality of states who were the creators of the federal government. So
Okay.
all these pocket constitutions, technically, they're misnamed because, again, you open it up and it's the Constitution for
And
the
that's
United States.
you're talking about the preamble.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's in the preamble, and the preamble is not a thou shalt thing. It's some generalities of what the overall purpose of the Constitution is. So it really doesn't worry me too much either way. If we just have people that would enforce this damn thing, you know, and I say damn because the people who don't enforce it are so damnable, and it's them that's damned. The Constitution is fine, just like you were saying. It's not broken. It's the corruption in our country. We need to get rid of corruption, not the of or the for.
and I think people need to be educated and brought to public knowledge that there are two constitutions. The people in our governments are working for the corporate constitution, and we don't know that. They're paid by foreign
Either way,
countries
it's just
to-
totally corrupt.
Yeah.
Either way, it's totally corrupt. And we just need to get back to the Constitution and get rid of those corrupt people. And my best solution to that is make Washington, D.C. irrelevant.
Again,
And your sheriffs can do that.
All right, a few more questions, if you would. Here's a comment. I was told the constitutional candidate for Ada County Sheriff, Doug Traubel, could not only use all of our support in the next 7 weeks, he could really use some tech, social media savvy help with getting the message out about how critically important this election is for sheriff and that more attendance and contributions are needed now. Volunteers are needed, and thank you for any support you can give to we the people. Blessed are the peacemakers,
Amen.
for they shall be called the children of God.
You want to change America? Elect Doug Traubel as your sheriff.
It's a good start.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Who did that? That was quite a whistle.
Well, I know, but you know, the thing that people don't realize is it takes a lot of money and a lot of resources to run a political campaign. You know, just as an example, every time, not the first time I ran because nobody ever thought I would win. So many people told me that, but anyway, we did. But then after that, every time I ran, I didn't ever run the numbers because I didn't care. I just focused on our campaign and the resources we had and how to spend them. First time I ran, we raised about $35,000. The next time, I think we're about 45. And this last time, I think we're right at $57,000, $60,000. But I've been told that in the last 2 times I ran, that there over $500,000 is spent to make sure that I don't get back in office. That, between TV ads and radio ads and nasty mailers
It's
that
all,
go out.
all
that
money
fly.
coming from outside Idaho,
The-
probably.
The dark, dark out of
Well, not all. A lot of it is going to be the
Yeah.
Ayaki guys. and all
Exactly,
that
the
stuff,
IAC
right?
guys. But the point is it's not cheap. It's big business. And whether we want to admit it or not, the only way we're going to get the name recognition out there for our candidates is you either better be knocking on 1,000 doors yourself individually. You better be out there making sure there's a sign at every intersection within 5 miles of where you live. And you better make sure that you are telling people, and if that's something you can't do, then you better donate, because remember our founders, their fortunes and their sacred honor
And they're like,
and their blood was what it took to found this country. It's going to take our fortune, our sacred honor, and hopefully not our blood to bring it back to where it needs to be and where they founded it.
Amen.
All right, this next one you can comment on, or we can just leave it as a thought by somebody from the audience. But how much of the apathy of the church has to do with the denominations and their pastoral training and discouraging pastors from being political, versus how much of it are denominations that are run by Freemasons? And I think the person here is suggesting that there are some denominations and groups that are going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. And that's certainly what Satan would want to do. He would want to deceive people to the point that they think they're going to something involving themselves in something that is true and good and God-honoring, and yet it is actually something that is far from God, something that God would say on that day, "Depart from me, I never knew you, workers of lawlessness." So I don't know. We can leave it at that, or if you have any
I say
comments
leave
on
it
it.
at that.
well, I have one comment. mychurchfinder.org.
Well, and I just have one comment, that no matter what it is you learn in church, no matter what it is you learn in school, no matter what it is you hear on the radio, you are personally accountable for your own thoughts and actions. You can't blame it on anybody or anything else, because God gave human beings a brain superior to any other creature on the face of this earth, and he expects us to use it.
Amen.
All right, this might be the last one. If a sheriff in Idaho wants to learn from Sheriff Mack and his materials, how long is the training? 1, and 2, how many days or hours does it take you to get a sheriff in constitutional shape?
Oh, my God.
Lifetime.
Heidi asked that question, I'm sure.
We hope it only takes 3 hours, because that's about how long the training is. But we also have a 6-hour course on our website, and you can take that, and it involves all of that. Although I did each topic, and I gave about 50 minutes to each topic on, and you can buy the course there. But what I guarantee is, if they'll put their butt in the chair, they will not leave the same afterwards, because not only do we have a Supreme Court victory, but we have the founding fathers on our side. Everything that's foundational about America is what we focus on. And credibility comes from the Supreme Court case that Sheriff Prince and I won in 1997. And it is so miraculous, it is so powerful, and it reinforces what the sheriffs are supposed to be doing in upholding, defending the Constitution and keeping their oath. It was just a miracle, and I encourage all of you, wherever you are, I encourage you to understand and read that case and use it every day, and hand copies of that case to public officials, mayors and city councilmen, county commissioners, and your sheriff. It's a great way to break the ice. Sheriff, I want you to have this little pocket-sized review of the Supreme Court case. The only time in history where sheriffs sued the federal government and won. Are you familiar with the case? Have you ever read it? Here, please do. I'll check back with you next week and see what you think about this. It's a great way to break the ice and get your sheriff to think about this. Most of them have never read it. Some of them never even heard of it.
And I wouldn't take no for an answer, because remember, you're the boss.
Right.
You're the boss.
That's right.
And the sheriff's oath is to two constitutions, as we've said. So do not take no for an answer. If you're not confident you have a constitutional sheriff, and you can learn how to vet the sheriff through the CSPOA website, if you're confident you don't have one, then you need to either find one or create one, whoever's sitting in that chair now, by not taking no for an answer. Get this material into the brain of your sheriff and the
So,
heart.
real quick question. Is that free? And two questions. One, is it free? Two, is that something, it sounds like it's of value for everybody to watch.
Everybody should see it.
So that way they can grade their sheriff and they
Well,
know the answer for the
Well,
sheriff too.
like Doug was saying, you're your sheriff's boss. You need to know about this case as well. You need to know what he's supposed to know. And so, yeah, and 3 hours, but if he doesn't do any follow-up to it, it's not going to take. But usually the ones that get there, like Sheriff Darleaf, one of the best constitutional sheriffs in the country, he just got reelected for his sixth term. And he came to our first training back in 2012. He said he never heard of us, never heard of the case, but he went there. And now he keeps copies of it on his desk, and he quotes from the case all the time. And he has a quote on his wall. And so, folks, it just takes some sincerity. And sometimes you, his constituents, have to kick that sincerity in his fanny, make sure he gets it. But some of them are pretty hard to get there. But if you can get him in the chair, I'll come and do it at his office for him and his entire office, or him and maybe a couple of his staff, 1-on-1 or 1-on-3 or whatever he wants. We'll come and do it if he wants to hide and not look like that radical, horrible thing that a constitutional sheriff gets branded all the time. Can you imagine? It's now a bad thing to uphold and defend the Constitution. Anything to do with the Constitution, it's a C word. No, it's our foundation. It's America. And that's what this is about.
And some of the pushback for that is it sounds like a foreign language, what we're talking about, to many sheriffs and many citizens. And the term constitutionalist, that shouldn't be a bad word, right? We should all understand and support and defend and teach and reflect the Constitution. So expect that kind of pushback, but don't take no for an answer because you are the boss.
Those who have stepped on the Constitution and want to have tried to turn constitutionalist into a bad word. Have you ever heard anybody, he's a constitutionalist? Like it's a bad word. Yeah.
I know.
And then, yeah, I own it, right? 100%.
We're all supposed to be.
Exactly.
Aren't we, right? Yeah. And as a citizen, you would think you would want that, right? Hey, I want this guy defending my rights, or no, I don't want that guy defending my rights. I want a boot on my neck.
Would you rather the Muslim constitutions?
Right,
So
exactly.
the way I like to explain it to people, I say the Constitution is a contract. It's a contract between the people of America, and it's been written by our forefathers. So the example is, let's say your father and my father start a company, and they write a contract. You get 50%, I get 50%, our kids get 50%, whatever. And a few years later, our parents have died, and I have more kids than you, and I go to the judge and I say, hey, judge, I have more kids than him. I should get more part of the company. You're like, no, we have a contract. The judge doesn't get to decide what the contract means. It's the people who wrote the contract. Our fathers decide what the contract means. It's our contract. The judge doesn't decide what it is. He has to decide what they originally meant. Now, we can change the contract, but then we got to do it together. But it's a contract. The Constitution is a contract. And if we don't have that contract, we have nothing to keep us safe. And that's the reason why we better protect it.
It's not living.
It's not living.
No.
The only way it's living is if we all get together and change
Well,
it.
it's not
Right.
dead.
Well, what I mean is it's not living.
It's not living in the minds of the.
It's a living.
It's not living in
social
case
values.
law. It's not living case
Mess with it.
opinion.
Yeah.
It's not living in the judge's mind. No, the only way you can change it is if we all get together, the original descendants of the Constitution. That's all of us.
Yeah.
To rewrite it.
Well, and I know that I went down and took the class, I think the first summer I was elected. And I'm convinced that it's made me a better legislator because this concept doesn't just work for sheriffs. This works for any.
So everybody should do it.
Everybody should do it. And your elected officials, the people that you vote for, you should ask them if they've done it. Because I really, honestly, truly believe that it has made me a better legislator because I understand the concept of of the Constitution and my responsibility in it and the responsibility of those people around me. So I think everybody should. I think every citizen of the United States. Because when I go talk to schools, I take this pretty package that's got this beautiful bow and all this stuff on it, and I'll hold it up and I'll ask the kids in the class, I'll say, how many of you would die for what's in this box? How many of you would lay down your life for what's in this box? And the first thing they always say is, what is it? And I say, well, that's just exactly the point. What would you give your life to protect? If you don't know what's in this box, you're not going to give your life to protect it. The Constitution is exactly the same way. If you don't know what your rights are, if you don't know what that document guarantees you, what it protects for you, you're not going to defend it and protect it and work for it until you know it. And this class teaches you that.
All right, quick follow-up question, Sheriff Mack. What's the regular price for the 6-hour course?
Well, the one off the internet is the one that's 6 hours, and I think it's $149.
Okay, 149.
To have me here, well,
We paid $200,000 to get you here.
if people would really fund us, I can come and do it for free. You know, so and I've done it for free before, and I've told sheriffs before, I'll come and do it for free, and then I've told his constituents, you guys need to help fund this for me.
We're trying to make that happen in Nampa soon.
Yeah.
I do have one free thing to offer. So one of the books I wrote is called "Can They Do That? How Police Get Around the Fourth Amendment," and I'm happy to email a free PDF copy to anybody. You can find my my Proton email on my website, which is dougforsheriff.com, because I don't have it memorized as a Proton email. But anyway, I'm happy to give that in a PDF because I want the citizens to know their rights. You know, and so I've had some officers say, "Why did you write that? Aren't you giving up like our secrets?" What? You know, I mean, we're the servants.
It's not
you know,
secret.
It's not a secret. You know, so you know, both halves of this equation should know the rules of engagement and stay in the guardrails of that. So if you're interested in a copy of that, just I'll email you a free PDF. Can they do that? How police get around the Fourth Amendment?
And another thing about that, the 3-hour class, I usually do it twice when I go to sheriff's offices and do it for all the personnel. So the people on graveyard shift can come in the morning or in the afternoon. So I'll do 2 classes, one in 9 to 12, and then one in the afternoon, 1 to 4. And so everybody gets to choose which one to come to. So it really works. It's been done. And I'm telling you, folks, it's the most powerful training on the face of the planet.
Sheriff Kendrick, Owyhee County, does that border Ada County?
Yeah, we border Ada, Canyon, Elmore, Twin.
All right, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there is a race in this next election for the sheriff in Ada County.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Do you have a preference on who's elected?
Doug Traubel has my vote if I live there, but I support Doug.
Right on. Okay, so my question for you, and if you would humor me, is if you had 60 seconds and you knew every voter in Ada County was going to listen to every word that you were going to say about the race for sheriff in this upcoming election in November, and you were able to look right here in this camera and tell them for 60 seconds, what would you say?
The most important place where you're going to need a constitutional sheriff is in a large metropolitan area. And that's where you need them the most. Rural areas, they're a given. You're going to have more there, but you need them in a major metropolitan area. As soon as something kicks off, these illegals we have MS-13, we have terrorists, we have Chinese. They kick off something bad in the U.S., they're going to lock down all the major cities. They're going to take away those rights away in the major cities. Who's left to stand in the divide to protect your rights if you live in a major metropolitan area? The sheriff. And Doug Traubel is the one to do it for you. And in fact, he's the only one that will do it for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Christy, how about you? Do you have an opinion on who wins sheriff in the next election?
I do have an opinion.
Would you like to humor me and answer the same question?
Yeah, I can do that for you. So no, if I lived in Ada County and I had to vote for the sheriff, I would vote for Doug. The fact that the sitting sheriff wouldn't meet with his constituents, the fact that he was right there in the room and wouldn't hear what they had to say. We've seen stuff happen in Ada County that you would maybe have to question. I've known Doug for several years. In fact, we tried to get him to come back to Elmore County and run for sheriff at one point because we know that Doug will defend and protect the Constitution with his life if it comes down to that. We know that Doug will stand strong shoulder to shoulder with us, that he will never let us down. There's only one choice, and that's Doug Traubel for Ada County Sheriff.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all very much for being here tonight and giving up your time. Are there any final thoughts from anybody on the panel?
We didn't cover the last one.
You didn't? What is the last one?
That was the Brady law. I mean, that's an important one for Sheriff Mack.
Folks, it's been my life. I first filed this lawsuit, it was 1994, and I was the youngest sheriff in the state of Arizona when this happened. It was all a miracle. It was just so miraculous, and the older I get, I look back at it, the miracles just keep popping up, and I even look back and I go, you know what? How I married my wife was a miracle. And the reason I married my wife was because her family was very constitutional. And as soon as we started dating, they started training me and educating me about the Constitution. And I would have never had that if I hadn't married her. And I don't think any other girl would have put up with any of this, So we became the Brady Bill family. Going to the Supreme Court was part of our family. And another miracle, I got to take two of my high school children with me. When I went to the United States Supreme Court, Lucy and Rich got to go with me inside, and security told us that they wouldn't be able to. And security called us the morning of we're already in Washington, D.C. at the hotel, and they called my lawyer, and they said, Matt can bring his two kids. We just had two seats empty up, and so free up, and because two people canceled. And sharing that with my children was absolutely phenomenal. We still talk about it to this day. And it was, being in there was a miracle. Talking to James Brady, who was shot during the assassination attempt on Reagan. You can go watch that movie and see it. And all of this has been so amazingly miraculous. And I just wanted to share it with anybody and everybody. And it really bothers me that sheriffs ignore this. And the National Sheriff's Association, they completely ignore it. And as a matter of fact, the first year we filed, they never called any of the 7 sheriffs who did this. They never called me, but they did call the person we were fighting. They asked Janet Reno to be their keynote speaker at their summer conference. Yeah, but they've never asked any of us that sued to stop it and to protect the office of sheriff. That's the National Sheriff's Association for you. And they're a complete waste of time. Except they have some decent training here and there. But when it comes to the Constitution or issues of freedom, they don't care. And folks, I give this miracle to all of you. It's such a powerful tool. And Scalia, writing for the majority, when he quoted the Federalist Papers, and said, hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other. Folks, that is our job. And there's so many others in there. I won't go into all of it tonight, but it is the absolute most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country. And if we fail to use it, then shame on us. But it is there for us, and it just absolutely reinforces everything that we said here tonight.
And the president of the National Sheriff's Association is Kareen Donahue, the Canyon County Sheriff.
Yeah.
So if you want to contact him and
Any of you know him, ask him why he hasn't returned my call.
well, but I mean he's someone we have direct contact with, and it's important that he understands this Supreme Court case and the relevance and importance of the CSPOA, what it's doing. I mean, he's the president of the National Sheriff Association, so if you have a way to get a hold of him, you're his boss in Canyon County.
I still remember he's from Canyon County.
That's right.
Because I looked him up and tried to call him and
That's
left
right.
him a couple messages.
All right, Heidi's going to have the booklets that summarize all the important things here every Monday for folks. I think, what they $2 each or something like that? $2 each. During our biblical citizenship class, which is right here at Old State Saloon every Monday morning at 9 a.m. That was awesome. Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you to the audience for being here as well. Feel free to stick around and enjoy some time together and into discussion. We really appreciate all your support, and of course, I know Doug Traubel would really appreciate any support, whether it's donating time, your energy, or your finances to his campaign. I'm sure he'd really appreciate that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.